Hello, everyone. As is customary, it takes a little bit of time for the attendees to stream in, to join. Welcome. Welcome our today's session. I am the president of the Harvard Business School Club of Toronto, a board member of Global Harvard Alumni in Healthcare. It is our pleasure to host this session today in collaboration with fellow Harvard and HBS clubs around the world, in the UK, in India, in the United States, in various parts of Latin America, Europe, and the world. Welcome, folks. During the prolonged strain of COVID-19 pandemic, and due to game-changing long-distance technologies, work-life synergy emerged, dissolving the barriers between office work and home life, business leadership aligning with personal priorities. Work-life synergy has motivated countless people to reflect on their life priorities and focus on what is important. Openness to trying to use new methods to bring balance and desire to improve the welfare of our world connectedly. Overcoming fear, division, and hostility. Many economic and social issues came to light, including a global mental health crisis. And our world sorely needs to heal in many diverse, urgent ways. One of the threats is dangerously overlooked. Our planet's soil is in grave danger of extinction. Over 2 billion people worldwide are afflicted by nutritional deficiencies. 52% of agricultural soil globally has been degraded. And then by the year of 2050, 23 trillion worth of soil will have been lost, spurring the risks of mass migrations, violence, and irreversible humanitarian crisis unless we address these challenges now. We in the Harvard and HBS community are here to think and act on the issues of the world, and the session is on conscious business leadership, work-life synergy, and ecological preservation. I'm delighted to have with us today two fantastic, amazingly impactful global leaders, Sadhguru and Miss Williams, whom I'll introduce shortly, and we'll have the discussion on these pertinent and important topics. Sadhguru has been imparting yoga since 1982. And in 1992, he established the Isha Foundation, an international nonprofit, non-religious organization dedicated to human well-being. He's an author, poet, and visionary. Sadhguru has been an influential voice at major global forums, including the United Nations World Headquarters and the World Economic Forum, and speaking on diverse issues at major educational institutions, including Oxford, London Business School, IMD, Stanford, Harvard, Yale, Wharton, and MIT. In 2017, Sadhguru received the Padma Vibhushan, the India's second highest civilian award, for his exceptional contribution to social welfare. And in 2022, Sadhguru completed a 100-day, 30,000-kilometer motorcycle trip across Europe and the Middle East in the movement to save the soil from degradation. The movement has so far garnered the support of 3.9 billion people across the world. Sadhguru, it's a pleasure to see you, this time virtually, and welcome you to our session. Welcome.
Namaskaram and good morning to all of you. Kate, namaskaram to you.
Thank you. Great to see you. Miss Williams, Kate Williams, is the CEO of 1% for the Planet, a global movement that inspires action and commitment so that our planet and future generations thrive. Kate joined the 1% for the Planet team in 2014 and stepped into her role as CEO in May of 2015 with a strong leadership track record, including roles as board chair of the National Outdoor Leadership School, as executive director of the Northern Forest Canoe Trail, as founder of an agricultural business, and as an elected political official. As CEO of 1% for the Planet, Kate has led significant growth in 1% for the Planet's scale and impact, guiding deep work on best practices for implementing high-impact giving strategies, growing a global brand, and operating as a highly effective and innovative enterprise. Ms. Williams brings a deep passion for the power of collective action to all she does. Ms. Williams, Kate, welcome.
Thank you.
And given the theme of our conversation, Kate, Sadhguru, I'm curious, what does conscious leadership mean to you? How, in your view, has the essence of leadership transformed during the pandemic years?
Kate,
Okay, thank you. I'm happy to start. It's a great question. I think for me, the sort of core of a definition of conscious leadership is that it's not about the leader. It's about the purpose or what you're trying to work toward, and then how, as the leader, you are creating the space to enable others to sort of be their best towards that goal together. So I think, conscious leadership then combines both clarity of purpose, which is often constructed collaboratively with those people you're working with, as well as a willingness to see it not as about the leader, but more as the leader as the creator of space or the facilitator of that collective ability to be so much more powerful than any of us are alone.
It's awesome. Thank you. Sadhguru, what is your perspective?
Well, in the business world, at least, people aspire to become leaders with personal ambitions of their own. Some thinking of a certain amount of money to be earned, position to be earned, or fame or name to be earned. Essentially, it's the ambition which drives them. When in an individual's life, he or she shifts from ambition to a larger vision, then naturally it is a conscious leadership. So when I say ambition, ambition is always a personal thing as to what I want to become. Vision is about what I want to create. The quality of life and the way our intelligence functions and how individual human beings respond to that, how people respond to a person's ambition and how people respond to a person's vision are totally different things. If you do not get that response from the people, which is a response of involvement, a response of love, a response of strong commitment and a relentless approach to what they want to create, if you don't get that, well, what we create will be just personal things, a few things. We won't really make a difference in the world. This is not even about we have to start off thinking we will make a difference. If we hold a vision larger than ourselves, it is not personal ambition of what I should get, but it's a vision of what we want to create, what is needed in the world, and can we make it happen? So that would be conscious leadership for me, which we have been working to create in the last 25, 30 years' time. We've been having leadership, we are in the process of building a leadership academy, a physical space, but we've been doing this work with hundreds of CEOs every year. We've been working with Indian and businesses from around the world also. I have been speaking regularly at business forums to make this difference that leaders who have… many businesses today are larger than nations. They have become that big. When it becomes that big, you need to have a vision, not personal ambition. So shifting people from personal ambition to vision has been my work in many ways in this arena, and many people, many actually have shifted this, and they have found how their ability to function, unfolding of their own genius, and how people are available to them in their best. The best side of every human being is available to you when you show that you're working for a vision, not for your personal ambition. You get the best from everybody. This is a common experience, and many businesses, small and large, have been transformed through this process called Isha Leadership Academy.
Got it. And then, of course, so much change during the pandemic with COVID-19 and the devastating last 2.5 years, and then so much social change, so many profound realizations that people have had, that they continue to be having. Lots of issues need mindful resolution. And then we're talking about the vision versus action, people setting their goals high and big and dreaming big and then fulfilling those dreams and goals. What do you both see as the greatest inhibitions to people working together and to achieving combined collective goals? What can leaders do to transcend these limits? What do you folks think?
I can go again and maybe just build on what we both were talking about. And I really appreciate the ambition, vision, kind of how you've broken those out, because I think the more we can facilitate that ability for, you know, those we are fortunate enough to have some influence with, and invite them into shifting away from kind of holding tightly to their goals, but really thinking about the power of kind of being open to connecting with others about shared goals. I think that, you know, there's a lot of power and opportunity in that. And on our team over the last few years at 1% for the Planet, you know, we've really created that clarity of vision. You know, where are we headed? Where are we trying to get to together? And my background is initially in outdoor education. So literally, I think about it in terms of like traveling over terrain. Where are we trying to get to on the map? And if we think narrowly and have only one person saying this is exactly how we need to go, we may not only get off route, but we also may miss some of the joys and delights along the way. You know, a wildflower that the leader may not have noticed, but someone else sees along the way. So, you know, really tapping into that opportunity to invite people into a shared journey and to, you know, experience both how that gets us to where we want to go together, you know, better, but it also makes the journey much more compelling and energetic for us.
Fantastic.
Well, we're all talking about the pandemic. Well, the worst thing about the pandemic is over 6 million people lost their lives, and almost anybody that we know has lost somebody who was dear to them, and in conditions which are bad, where they couldn't even see the faces of the dead and they were just disposed of without their loved ones seeing. This is the cruel part of the pandemic. At the same time, compared to what other generations have faced in the form of wars and famines and other calamities, this is a soft ball. All this needed was a conscious response, but most societies fail to do that. See, initially, when it just broke out in the March of 2020, so when people, media asking me, Sadhguru, what do you think we should do, this, that? I said, scientists are saying it has a life cycle of 14 days. If all of us as human beings were conscious enough, if we just sat in our homes for 14 days, just among the few people that we know, that already we are in touch with, we don't meet anybody for next 14 days. If we do this, the virus is done, all right? Then somebody came out and said the cycle is 28 days. The same could be done for 28 days. You've always been hankering for a vacation, you've always been complaining not enough time with the family, here it was. But instead of that, we are driving ourselves towards a mental pandemic now, because too much time with the family, I believe. Lot of people complaining, maximum number of divorces happening, suicides happening. This is tragic. See, the problem is just this. Human intelligence has evolved to a point where if you don't wield it consciously, it is life-taking. You can call it stress, you can call it anxiety, you can call it by any number of names. Essentially, it is just that you don't know how to handle your intelligence, it's turned against you. You turn your intelligence against yourself, nobody can save you, because internally it slashes you up in so many ways. So, instead of creating a society where we can conduct ourselves consciously, we are trying to fix everything from outside. This is not going to work. Pandemic was a good reminder for humanity, a very expensive reminder, as I said earlier, over 6 million lives, so it's a very expensive reminder. But everybody right now is in revenge travel, revenge vacation, revenge splurges and parties happening. No, it looks like we don't want to change, everybody is talking about when do we get to normal. Their idea of normal is to behave irresponsibly, to behave unconsciously. If we were… See, the significance of being human is this. We are not very different from other creatures. We do the same things that they do. They eat, we sleep, they sleep, they reproduce, we reproduce, they die, we die. This is all we do with life. The only significant thing about human life is we can do all this consciously. They do it instinctively and compulsively. So if this change we don't make, that we conduct every aspect of our life, of eating, sleeping, reproduction and even death, if we don't do this consciously, then in many ways, the whole evolutionary significance of becoming human has gone waste upon us, because we are the only creature on this planet that is being referred to as human being. There is no elephant being, there is no ant being, there is no tiger being, only human being, because we are supposed to know how to be. If we know how to be, this pandemic would have been just a child's play, we could have handled it. Because we don't know how to be, we are still in such compulsive states. Now this pandemic became such an uncontrollable thing, and over 6 million lives and so much disruption everywhere in the world. About economy slowing down, I think this is a lesson we have to learn, that we need to slow down our economies consciously. If it happens like this unconsciously, it's very cruel, because all the wrong people get hit, poorest of the poor get hit, unfortunately. But slowing down the economy consciously is an absolute must at some point. Because at the pace at which we are going, the Living Earth statistics says that right now the entire world is aspiring to be like an American citizen. What an average American citizen has, if the 8 billion people on the planet should have, we need 4.5 planets. But we don't have 4.5, we just have a half a planet. If we are conscious of that, consciously slowing down a few things is very, very important. Where we are talking only about emissions, we are talking only about environmental stuff, no. In every way, slowing it down a little bit is important. Slowing down does not mean a bad life. Actually, slowing down means a better life.
We talk about commonalities. So we talk about things that unite us. We talk about some of our collective excesses and how we can curb those excesses. And ultimately, it sounds like we're talking right now about seeing in others what we see in ourselves, recognizing it, naming it, and honing, and then also communicating for the good of the people, for the good of our society. And then when we talk about what also unites us is that the planet we live on, the soil of the earth has no political agenda, acknowledges no borders for its 8 billion inhabitants that we just mentioned. And then we talk about the turmoil of war, and we talk about commonalities. On the other end, we have the disconnectedness of the 6,500 languages, both the disconnectedness, but also the beautiful diversity. We have more than 4,000 actually religions, and we only have about 268 years, less than 10% of our recorded history without war. And this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the horrible things and horrible excesses. And then we have different kinds of discrimination still that we're far from overcoming. How does the fight for the environment that unites us, how do you think it helps us discover commonalities and empower causes for human rights, diversity, and fair opportunity? Sadhguru.
Oh, see, if we do not make every difference that we have into a discriminatory process, there is no problem with differences. The world is beautiful only because we are different. If all of us were same, could you live in this world? It would be horrible. If you had just one more person just like you in your home, could you live there, I'm asking you? It would be impossible to live there. So, we are glad we are different, we look different, we talk different, we think different, it's fantastic. But when people are immature enough to think that every difference must become a differentiation, that you have one kind of skin color, I have another kind of skin color, this is a big issue, you belong to one gender, I belong to another gender, that's a big issue, all kinds of things. Every difference we are trying to make it into a discriminatory process. This is coming because fundamentally, human beings are still longing to dominate something. This is functioning from the portion of our intelligence which is designed for our survival. Well, today modern scientists are going about saying there is a reptilian brain within you, which is about survival, and there is a cerebral cortex which always wants to expand and include. So which one are you working from? Can you live here without taking care of your survival? No, you have to take care of your survival. But the very idea of civilization is that we can lower our guard for survival lower and lower so that nobody has to worry that somebody is going to take away your food or somebody is going to do harm to you. This is the idea of a civilized society, so that people can put down their survival instincts and allow their expansion or their consciousness to grow in such a way that really human intelligence finds many solutions, not create many problems as it is doing right now. So, this ability to put the survival system or your reptilian brain to a minimum level and expanding the other aspects needs a stable society. Every few years, if you break up into wars, because economies depend on wars, right now too many people are invested in producing military equipment and ammunition and stuff. If I'm making guns and making bullets, and if I sell a gun to you, I expect you shoot somebody, at least shoot the sky, do whatever, use the bullets, otherwise what will happen to me? I'm producing bullets, all right? So, we have invested so much in that direction that if anybody is living in that kind of a la-la land, all this is made just to be kept, never to be used, including the nuclear weaponry. If anybody is foolish enough to believe it's never going to be used, that's very foolish. We have made it because we want to use it. On whom and where and when may be a question. Whether we will use it or not, there is no question. We will use it someday. Which way we will use it, on whom we'll use it, it's just always my war is better than your war, you know. This thing is going on for too long. After World War II, we thought we will never again fight another war. Once again, Europe is beginning to gear up for another war, preparing itself. Otherwise, most nations did not invest in war machinery, which was a fantastic thing, and the same nations which fought each other so bitterly came together as an union. When I first heard about the concept of European Union, tears came to me because this is fantastic. When the same generation people alive, those people who fought World War II are still alive, you thought about putting Europe together is one of the most fantastic things that have happened. But once again, we've started breaking that up in so many different ways. Somebody's ambition, somebody's push is doing this, but this was one of the significant steps in human consciousness. The same people that you fought with absolute bitterness, now you are willing to form a borderless, a group of nations, which was a fantastic step. But unfortunately, it looks like we are going to lose that out in the next couple of years or in the coming years. I hope we don't move that way, but right now we are taking steps in that direction, unfortunately. So, when we talk about the pandemic is a very soft ball. Only because we are so unconscious and compulsive, it seems so hard on us. There is also one more aspect. You were talking about soil. Well, soil is definitely a unifying factor. When we are constantly looking at what are our differences, in every possible way, from color of the skin to color of the hair to every goddamn thing, all right? We are looking for what are the differences. It's also very important we identify what are the common factors between us. We all come from the same soil, we are eating and thriving off the same soil. When we die, we go back to the same soil. It is definitely a unifying force, and we must recognize that. What are all the things that unite us? We are breathing the same air, we are surviving out of the same soil, our bodies are just the soil that we walk upon us. So these are things that more and more this generation should become conscious about, so that there is some sense of integrity among us, because nations are not absolutes, religions and races are not absolutes. Well, there are differences, For the sake of administration, political and administrative reasons, we have sliced this planet into different pieces, but this is not a cake that you can cut and take away your piece somewhere. This functions as one whole. Life is a global phenomena. Politics may be local, administration may be local, human societies may be local, but life on this planet, ecology on this planet is a global phenomena. You cannot conduct it separately, there is no way you can do anything like that. So if we educate our people, if we make policies where soil policies at least must be of common kind of policies across the world, maybe the economic aspect can be different from different nations, but the intent of raising the organic content and making sure the microbial life, which is the foundational life for our existence, does not go into famine conditions, which it has already. In most nations, the minimum that is necessary in terms of organic content or organic matter, according to UN agencies, is minimum is 3 to 6%. The bottommost minimum is 3%, but not even a single nation has an average of 3% in their agricultural lands. The highest that you find is in Northern Europe, which is 1.48%, and Southern Europe is 1.1%. Below 1% is considered desertification. United States is 1.25%, India is 0.68%, Africa is 0.3%. This is a disaster unfolding across the world. We always think disasters will happen to somebody else, but at last we are creating a disaster which will affect the entire world. So, this is not the kind of unification we need. We need unification of well-being, not of suffering.
We definitely need unification of people realizing the issues we're facing together, like what you're describing, and fighting together to build more of our understanding that we're part of a united whole, discover commonalities, and fight the unjust and horrible gender, racial, sexual discriminations for more human rights, diversity, and fair opportunity. And what a wonderful place to realize that we're all walking the same planet, and if we do not fix the issue of soil degradation, ecological preservation, then those that come after us won't be able to walk the same path. And then in line of that, in terms of people who realize this, people who understand that, people who want to fight the injustice, people who want to repair our planet, there's a saying that's attributed to Lao Tzu, and I'm curious, Kate, what you think about this, where the saying is the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. But most people change direction when immediate results are far from being visible. Whether in business, volunteering, or meditation and spiritual practices, how do you recommend one learns to convert impatience into resounding involvement? What do you think are some of the steps leaders could use to help focus their team members?
Couple thoughts, and also just building on what Sadhguru was just saying, is I think, in addition to our, reptilian and conscious brains, part of what frames us as humans is that we are storytellers and story creators, and we kind of live within those stories that we create. So talking about war, talking about difference, talking about division, it's often because we kind of believe the story that that's how we operate. And we have some great partners in the 1% for the Planet Network, Jose Gonzalez and the Outdoorist Oath. And one of the concepts that they've really been pushing in a really valuable way is, what if we stop talking about ourselves as, a well-oiled machine, as an example of an effective organization, and instead think of ourselves and tell the story of ourselves as a well-tended meadow or a highly functioning ecosystem. And when you do that, you start to see yourself and understand yourself differently. There's not that same short-term, got to put fuel in and get from here to there. You're actually thinking about cycles and the value of the differences that contribute different inputs. So one piece of my response is that I think creating different stories that enable us to just situate ourselves differently are really important and quite simple and powerful when you look at the ways in which you use language. So we talk about building a pipeline of talent. I've done that. What if it's actually, pipeline is unidirectional. It's, refers to typically sort of fossil fuel deliveries. What if we shift to thinking of flowing rivers? that sometimes have floods and enrich the territory around them. So, the examples go on, but I think really shifting the frameworks within which we see ourselves operating can be a very powerful way in which we can enable ourselves to take one step, pause, think about it, take the next step, not immediately see the short-term need. The challenge is that our capitalist system has some built-in ways in which short-term returns are mandated, but increasingly we're seeing a lot of really creative solutions. And we haven't really talked a lot about creativity yet, but I think creativity is such a generative force, and it's something that is part of another way in which, as biological organisms, we are distinguished from other creatures, is that we have this creative force that is often just like dying to get out. And so I think the creation of benefit corporations, that was a creative way of thinking about how can we do business differently, such that our obligations, the constraints that we must live within, are different. There's some great work being done on creating perpetual trusts in which the assets are owned by the mission, not by people. So then what a purpose stands for a company is what is held as an asset by a trust, and then people operate within that. So I think creativity, creating some different narratives, and then also the last thing I would say is just, as humans, we are wired to connect. We are wired to belong. And I think oftentimes, for me at least, I'll speak personally, tapping into that and remembering to slow down for those connections, and always seeing the power of that. So when I take the time to really connect and have a conversation that goes beyond just, hi, how are you? Good, how are you? Without anyone listening to anyone's answers, but actually really listening. Usually on the other side of that, I realize it hasn't actually taken any longer. It's just been, the time has been more spacious. And so you realize what you can sort of, it's not even accomplish. I hesitate from using that word, even though that was what was coming up. It's that you've allowed for time for yourself to inhabit time differently.
Kate, for this you have to come to India. People will talk to you their entire life to you in 5 minutes before you start any business.
Excellent, I'm in, sign me up. My kids often get frustrated with me because I spend a long time at the grocery store because I'm talking to everyone there, so I can understand that. All right, I'll stop there, thank you.
Oh, this is great, helpful, Sadhguru. And in terms of framing, communicating, finding similarities, I know that in inner engineering, you talk a lot about how people can reframe some of their mindsets towards more positivity and acceptance of their reality and connectedness. Do you have something to add in terms of how leaders can motivate some of their…
Yes, this quote, what you said about 1,000 mile, whatever, 1,000 kilometer or mile journey starts with a single step. This is very important. This is something that we are inculcating in everybody around us, that like we have this annual business program called Insight. This is, every year we have about 250 top CEOs in the country and also from outside, where they come and go through a 4-day program on leadership. So when they come, this is always almost a common question every time when these events happen. This 11th edition happening now in the coming November. So people ask, Sadhguru, how does this Isha Foundation function? It seems to be happening seamlessly, variety of activity, range of activities, over 5,600 full-time people who are all volunteers, nobody's paid for, and over 17 million part-time volunteers, nobody paid for, spending money from their own pockets and making this happen. How does it work? It goes on so seamlessly without a hitch, every event and event. And our events are so varied, from fashion to poverty alleviation, to education, to spirituality, name it, everything is there. So when I was just telling them, see, the important thing here is I make sure people are dedicated to the process. They're devoted to the process. They don't even know what is the goal and they don't care. In yoga, there is a saying, if you have one eye focused on the goal, you have only one eye to find your way, which is very inefficient. Because thinking of the next step, well, if you don't take this step well, there is no next step. So being involved and devoted to the process is very important, because the goals that you set are always an exaggeration of what you already know. But our lives are rich only when things that we do not know right now happen to us tomorrow. That is when our lives are rich. So, our dreams being fulfilled is not important. What we could not dream of happened, that is important. That is when life feels spectacular. Otherwise, dreams are just enlarged or exaggerated versions of what we already know. So, to give you this context, I was doing a program, a 3-day event for one of the top US corporates, top 25, it's a global corporate, it's one of the biggest companies in the world, I don't want to put names to it. Top 25 executives were with us. I had 9 volunteers to support me, and our volunteers just work 22 hours a day non-stop. Nobody has to tell them what needs to happen, whatever needs to happen, they will be doing. So they observed this. On the second day, they asked me, Sadhguru, where do you get such people? You know, they're looking for attrition. So I say, no, you don't get such people, you got to make them. They say, how do we make them? I said, you have to make them fall in love with you. How do we do that? I said, first you have to fall in love with them. They say, oh, they don't pay us for that. So, what we think is work.
And then occasionally, I believe things that can be thought of work can be thought of as part of life. And then, of course, when we see the great resignation that is happening right now, the pandemic-driven phenomenon of millions of workers, particularly millennials, Gen Zs, leaving their jobs, searching for something greater. And Kate, you might see that a lot in the people that you interact with, the people that you touch, where people are seeking perhaps a work-life balance. I've also heard of work-life integration. I personally aim for something I call work-life synergy. How do you think different spheres of leaders' lives should interact with each other? How should leaders coming up in the millennials, Gen Z generations, how should they be thinking about leaders' interaction with their passion, their purpose, the fulfillment?
Mm-hmm. Such a great question. And it really was, highlighted during the pandemic when, we found ourselves conducting our business, kind of literally from our bedrooms in many cases with, kids right outside the door and things like that. And I think, and also with, technical difficulties that make us aware of, some of the just like real challenges of operating in a physical world with very different rules than we knew before. And I think what I have learned with my team, so I'll just speak very personally, is that, the value of being sort of wholly yourself and deeply personal, while also, allowing for, the setting of the kinds of boundaries that serve people, and those may be different, for different people, are very important. And so, with our team, we definitely, I use the word love because I feel love for them. And, that is often, seen as kind of taboo in the business workspace, but, it is what I feel for my team. So I'm happy to say it. We, we definitely talk openly and receive feedback from our team around sort of what they need in order to, be supported. And what's, some interesting examples of how we've navigated that are some of the very like practical things that people talk a lot about, or, the 4-day work week, things like that. And we've decided that, well, actually, for parents of young kids, a 4-day work week might actually be kind of tough, because if you have to put in a bunch of long days and then you only get your time off in sort of one big chunk, you don't have the flexibility that you may need to manage your particular family circumstances. So, we very much operate on a flex schedule. So people, it's our obligation to make it really clear what's the work that needs to get done. and then to allow for people as adults in the world with their own particular circumstances to make the choices that they need to, deliver on their obligations to our, our community as a, a team, and also to take care of the things that they need to. So it's really fun to have seen how people have, at first a little like uncertainly, like, figuring out like, what does it mean to really live in a flexible schedule, but then to really celebrate it and share like, oh, I had went surfing at lunch today. It was awesome. And, and then show up at a meeting. And that's great. We love it when people are doing that. And we have found that it really brings, energy to our connections with each other and a great deal of focus to the work, because you have to be really clear on what is the work and what is someone else expecting from you, and, and things like that. So I think, creating that, and then, as a leader, sort of back to that part of the question, I think, really being open about sort of my own navigation of that. And I think it's a fine line, because sometimes too, it's okay. You want people to be able to, maintain some, the distance that they feel comfortable with. They don't have to share their whole personal life, but you want them to know that them having that life is really important. So I've, sort of realized that my ability to be both open, but also, to, not share all is really, has been valuable. And I think bottom line is authenticity. And I hesitate saying that word because I think it can be overused, and it only is authentic if it's actually authentic. So it's not something that I think you can manufacture, say, I'm going to be authentic today. You build it over time, you earn it by really showing up as who you are. And I think for conscious leaders, over time, you realize that is absolutely critical, because to be conscious, to show up wholly as yourself with vision and not ambition, it must be who you are. I can only be a conscious leader in the way that I can be a conscious leader. Boris, you can only be a conscious leader in your particular way based on who you are and what your particular consciousness is. So I think really demonstrating that as a leader invites everyone on the team to feel like, okay, there's space for me to show up as who I am. So those are some of the things that, I have learned and continue to learn. It's like every day, it's how you show up. And that's what makes it fun and engaging. That's what's part of being human. Every day is the day in which I get to show up and figure out how to do this particular piece of work and learning that is in front of us on this day with the people who are there in their particular spaces on that day. So
yes. Every day is a day of discovery. Every day is a day of, sounds like, communicating flexibility, but also trust. And as you mentioning, authenticity, and then working with different people who have maybe a different consciousness, bringing them together into a common combined business and organizational consciousness. And then sometimes then when that happens, I wonder, there's situations where people speak the same language, but they're not understanding each other because of maybe different consciousness, that they have different way of how they're processing information. So I'm curious, what is the best way to find alignment with others when maybe people are thinking things that are somewhat different, individuals and teams? How do they best align energies to maximize success in business, to attract partners on effectively similar frequencies? What are your thoughts on that, Sadhguru? How have you worked to achieve that, and how have you recommended others do it?
Kate is a very kind leader and a boss. She's talking about 4-day work. All the people who are around me, I keep them on 7-day week, 16 to 18 hours a day. So you shouldn't have said that. All my people are looking at me.
To be clear, we don't do a 4-day work week. We let people determine how they want to set themselves up to do their work.
So, especially because we are running a volunteer organization, everybody is here by choice, they are not hired. So, there are a variety of people. Right now in the center, there must be at least 55 to 60 nationalities living here, every kind of person. So this is a common refrain. People come to me and say, Sadhguru, I can't work with her, she's impossible, like this, like that. So I tell them, see, this is the kind of people who are in this world. If you think they're horrible, yes, this world is populated with horrible people. But if you want to work with ideal people, you must go to heaven and today. But if you think what you're doing is very significant, you must learn to work with the people who are here right now. Only if you don't realize the significance of what you're doing, then it matters who you're working with. If you see what you're doing is very significant, it doesn't matter who it is, you will somehow find a way to do your work. This is the basic thing. And above all, to understand this, can I tell you a story, Boris? Because when I say once upon a time, you should not… all your audience should not think it's bedtime, that's a problem, you know. So this happened. A man came to a place where 3 men were working. And he went to the first man and asked, "What are you doing here?" The first man looked up and said, "Why can't you see? Are you blind? I'm cutting stone." He was cutting stone. He went to the second man and asked, "What are you doing here?" He said, "Something to fill my belly, to survive in this world, I have to do something, so I am doing this work." He went to the third guy and asked the same question, "What are you doing here?" He stood up in great joy and said, "I am building a wonderful temple here." All of them are doing the same work, but the context is different. One is just cutting stone, another is just doing something for a living, another is creating something very valuable. This is all life is about. All of us may be doing the same work. It is the context with which we approach it which suddenly makes it very significant, no matter what kind of job you're doing. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you look at it carefully, you will see that you are making an immense contribution to many, many, many lives. If you're conscious that you're making this contribution, you will see you're fired up, you're not looking for, "Thank God it's Friday," you are looking, what more opportunity can you get to do it? Because when you're contributing, when you see that you make a difference in everything that you touch, well, you don't want to break from that. Recently, I was in Swiss Alps just about 10 days ago, and I was doing a video for the Swiss tourism department ministry because they supported our Save Soil movement. I had promised them I'll do some videos for them, so I was doing that. So I was asked by this official, "Sadhguru, where do you take your vacations?" I said, "What is that?" My life is a vacation because working 18 hours a day is my vacation, because when you're doing something that you really, really care for, you don't seek vacations. When you do something that you feel is a burden to carry, you get exhausted by doing it. Well, if there is physical exhaustion, of course you can take a rest, you can go somewhere, that's different. But people want to be away from work because, oof, it's so burdensome. It is burdensome only because it doesn't mean so much to you. If it means that much to you, the more opportunity you get, the better it is. So if you don't love what you're doing, either you must give it up or you must fall in love. One of these things you must do.
And get more energy from it, right?
Well, see, this is a living cosmos. Energy is everywhere. This is a place where we are, where many people here are today. At one time only I was the only one. Today there are many people here capable to work, non-stop, day and night, for 2 days, 3 days without sleeping. They can just go on. Most of us are made like this because energy is free, it's always there. The question is only, are you receptive or not? You will not be receptive if you are too much of a personality. If you hold your personality, a strong sense of personality or persona, you will be like a… a small cubicle of your own, and that doesn't transact. But instead of being a person, if you become a presence like a life, then everything is a transaction. Right now, your breath is a transaction with the rest of the atmosphere. If this doesn't happen, you don't exist. So this respiration is not the only way you connect with the cosmos. You can connect with every cell in your body. This is what yoga means. The word yoga means union. Yoga does not mean twisting, turning and ending up like a leftover noodle. Yoga means union, that in your experience, you experience everything as yourself. So, if you know a little bit of yoga, do not think it's a practice, do not think you have to twist and turn. Yoga means to become one with everything. Right now when you breathe, what you exhale, the trees are inhaling. What the trees exhale, we are inhaling. So one half of my lungs is actually hanging out there. If you actually experience this, after that, nobody has to tell you what to do with the tree. There is no teaching needed, there is no environmental sciences needed, you know what to do. This is what yoga means, that you experience the world around you as a part of yourself, which it is anyway. The fact of it is, it is. If people don't realize how it is, let them keep their mouths shut and hold their nose for 2 minutes, they will understand. That without this transaction, you cannot exist. Without this yoga, you cannot exist. Without some sense of union, you cannot exist. Your union with the air that you breathe, water that you drink, the food that you eat, the soil that you walk upon, without this union, you cannot exist. Not only this, even on the subatomic particle level, now people are saying, you are communicating with the whole cosmos, otherwise you cannot exist. You are held together by this. You do not know where it begins, where it ends. All your science and ideas and big ideas, we still don't know a damn thing about where we are in this cosmos.
And just to build on that, is my experience as a leader of an organization and as, you know, a human being on the life journey is that we are all on the journey. And so a lot of our shared work is, you know, cycling through the sort of learnings and ahas and the need to sort of restore and step back to gain that understanding. So, you know, what you're describing around the ability to kind of go 18 hours and consider that, you know, as good as vacation. My experience is that for a lot of people, you know, we're learning and we have to kind of have time to restore and reflect and say, okay, wait, yes, I hear what he's saying. I get it. Okay, now I can lean back in and do the work. And so I think balancing how, you know, a group of people who are on the journey of gaining greater understanding and consciousness can keep themselves going for the infinite game. That's one of the things we talk about is we're not playing a finite game. We have real accomplishments that we need to seek for our planet. But it's an infinite game, as you're saying. If we only are sort of setting our goals based on our current awareness, we're never going to get anywhere because we need to create things that we don't yet know about. But I do think keeping ourselves restored and regenerative for an infinite game is part of the work. And you know, myself as a leader, I need to step back sometimes to clear the brain, to be able to you know, be open to the thoughts, to the understandings, to then lean back in, you know, and support my team as they're on that same journey.
And then that interconnection that we have with everything in this world, with breathing the air and being part of what is out there and what is out there being part of us and being on an infinite journey that we're on, it's fantastic to see a greater and greater realization of this fact of where we are, a greater knowledge, a greater understanding. There's more that we don't know. And then we have governments, we have businesses, we have investors who are driving some of what is our current society, driving the change. There's clear division and access to the decision-making where we see certain regions of the globe affected by growing crises, growing ecological crises. We see that maybe some parts of the world maybe are already at a loss, unfortunately, where things stand with those geographies. What would you like to see? How would you like the governments, businesses, investors come to realization of this connectedness faster? How can we, as a community of business people, better help spread the knowledge, better help them be informed and take productive, constructive, thoughtful action?
You want me to start?
Please.
Okay. this is something I think about all the time. So I really appreciate this question, because what we see at 1% for the Planet, and again, our model, as Boris shared in the introduction, is we're engaging businesses all over the world to lean in and take action in the form of giving their 1%. And one of the things that we encounter and we understand is that there's often this sense of there is so much to be done, and we need government, we need business, we need people, everyone, there's a lot to be done to make this world healthy and sustainable for the long term. And it can be paralyzing, and it can be hard to know, is this better or that better? And, many people understandably are either wired or have kind of, through the fear that's very natural to feel in a case like this, really want to get uncertainty down to zero. Like, I want to know what's the best thing to do, and then that's what I'm going to do. And so in the meantime, they're spending a lot of time in this space of getting that uncertainty down to zero, but not taking action. And we really try and think in the more of a, a both and there's power in taking action that will enable you to create then further action. So, our belief and the 1% for the Planet model is based on the concept that lean in and take the step of giving your 1%, which is not nothing. It's a big deal to give 1% of your revenue. And we know that people put a lot of thought into that. And then what we see is that's not the only step that people take. You then become part of a community of other people who are making that 1% commitment, and who are also thinking about this or thinking about that, or changing this or changing that. And, suddenly you gain the energy of, oh, it was really hard to figure out what to do first, but once I did it, I became part of the sort of flow of taking next steps and doing even more, and engaging with amazing nonprofit partners who, are able to sort of share their energy and wisdom and what they're doing. And when you're taking positive action, you really do generate and gain a lot of energy from that. That enables you to then do further. So I think really thinking about how do you not get stuck in the analysis of what's the action that we most need. We absolutely need to be thinking about that. And we need for government to take action. We need for, Sadhguru described his 100-mile or 100-day extensive motorcycle ride to get people's attention. Like, we need to do those things that get people's attention. That action must be taken. And we also, in the meantime, need to be taking the incremental actions that keep on building us forward and keep on fueling our energy to, get more action going.
That's great. That's great. Showing people by example, by knowledge, showing the commonalities. And then what's happening is there's a need for that. There's a need for governments, businesses, investors to do more, and at the same time, there's considerations of not losing the momentum of present day technology, of our civilization, the experiences we've gained. So people are weighing, okay, we need to do a lot more, but what would we lose if we did that? So is there a path? Is there a way to show people that, either it's a proper trade-off, or no, you're not going to lose that much, but you're going to gain that much more? Sadhguru, in your journey, you've seen so much right now, obviously on this journey of what is happening now, immediately after the pandemic. You've mentioned you're dialoguing with many governments, many government organizations. What do you tell them in terms of how do we go forward that is most impactful, most productive? How do you change their minds?
See, when it comes to governments, is audio okay for you? Because it's raining heavily here, so is it okay? Okay.
It's good.
So, when it comes to governments, because they're democratically elected, we must understand the nature of the governments that we have formed. So if we give them a term of 4 years or 5 years, in some countries it's 4 years, some other countries it's 5 years. The nature of the job is such that you're right on top of everything for 4 or 5 years. Suppose you lose your election, you just become a job like that. If you have a job like that, naturally you're trying to impress people within those 4 years. You will never take really long-term steps, because what is the use of long-term after you've lost your election? Because you're not on the scene. So, This is the bane of democracy, that right now we need to address this, that unfortunately, if from this party to that party you shift in most nations, except in a few nations where polity is of a certain maturity, everywhere else, what this party does, the other party will undo, and what that party does, this party will undo. It's going on like this, as if these things are a concern of a party. This is a concern for a nation and for the world. But unfortunately, it's going this way. So, if political parties or political leaders have to take long-term steps, it's very important at least 60% of the adult population stands up and expresses their concern for the long-term well-being of the nation or the world or their children at least. They have to express that. That unfortunately has never happened anywhere. People are only asking for little reduction in the gas prices, 1% discount in their income tax, whatever, and they're getting those things. The whole debate of economics is just around this little benefit, that little benefit. And the way we're building the economy right now is, see, there was an ecology before economy. Using that ecology, when I say using that ecology, our body is ecology, the clothes that we wear is ecology, the furniture that we're sitting on is ecology or soil, the building that we are sitting in is made of soil, everything is from the land, all right? So, we built one floor of home and we were very happy with that. Then we had a need to build a second floor. Now we started pulling out the foundation stones and start building the second floor. Well, you know what will be the consequence of that. That is where we are. We are pulling out the foundation stones. Somebody even has the temerity to argue, economy versus ecology. There is no such thing. Ecology first and then economy. If the ecology is rich, we can build a strong economy. If ecology just peters out, then what economy will you build out of what? Can you build it out of thin air? There is no such thing. Ecology, this is one thing when I went to the United Nations, I said, say, I've come here to officiate the marriage of economy and ecology. Because if you pit them against each other, right now the odds are so much in favor of the economy, ecology will lose absolutely and economy will win hands down. That's how it is. So it's very important that we marry these two aspects. We don't see this economy and ecology as two aspects. Ecology and economy are one thing. You cannot do these things separately. So, some of the policies that we make in the world must not be national policies, they must be global policies. Well, all these whatever conventions are trying to achieve that. I would say they're reasonably successful, it's good, it's very encouraging, but still not fully there. It's very important that this should have more teeth, these conventions, that people come to agree, will they fulfill this agreement or not? And also a fair way of looking at things, looking at all nations as same parity. Those who have gotten into an advantageous position must be little more generous in giving technologies, giving financial assistance to poorer nations to make it happen. If you do not treat every human being with the same yardstick, it is never going to work, it'll always be you versus me. The sense of unfairness is so strong that people will subjugate ecology because just to beat each other up, you know, in competition with each other, that you are not doing enough, I'm not doing enough. Some things have to be addressed as one world. Maybe your economics, your military, your politics, you can address them as separate nations, but a few things concerning the planet, a few things, basic things concerning the life that we are, we must make common policies and try to approach as a common solution. Different nations may have different methodologies, different economic capabilities to address it in different times periods. That is okay, but there must be a common policy. I know there is a striving in that direction already, but more cohesiveness needs to come, more agreement needs to come on this, and every human being needs to think like this. When it comes to ecology, there is no such thing as my nation and your nation. There is only one world, and keeping that well, keeping that healthy is most important. Otherwise, we are walking, see, after all this civilization, after all the infrastructure that we built, after all the education, information, many things that we created in the last century, once again we are driving towards a famine zone. Once again, it is looking like whoever has the biggest guns will have the food, others will not have the food. This year, 7 nations are going into famine. That's not a great thing. Over 39 million people are in famine conditions already this year, and World Food Program is throwing up their hand. $1 billion that they needed. Last year they spent $9 billion, this year they wanted 15 billion, but they don't have that money because most of these contributions have gone towards the war effort, and people who are really starving have no food. It is said, some of the agencies are saying in the next 4 months, at least 360,000 children below 8 years of age will perish because of food scarcity in these regions, and nobody is going to reach out to them because everybody's focus is elsewhere. That is tragic. After creating all this in the world, if we have some humanity, if a child is starving to death, something human within us should stir up. So if that doesn't happen, I'm glad that she's doing this 1% with the business. I must tell you, Kate, almost 17 years ago, I started something with the same name, 1%.com I started, but that was with the governments. I said 1% of the military expenses, if you put together, we can fix education, food, nourishment, and everything for the world. You know, 1% accounts to some $535 billion on that day. And we said if you contribute this, 25 nations on the planet, if they put 1% of their military expense towards this, every child on the planet could be nourished, educated, taken care of, and we can build a great world. And once you contribute like this, nobody is going to fight with each other largely. Even if small quarrels happen, we can deal with it. Major wars could be avoided. I was just about to do this. I was, about to conduct a program for 5 top world leaders to bring them together to this idea. But just then the Iraq war broke out, and that was the end of my 1%. I'm glad you are smart enough to do the 1% with the business.
Yeah, well, we're not quite at that total number yet, but we're getting there.
We are in a place and time where the collective thoughts, the collective actions of communities like the people seeing this session are that much more important, that much more crucial. And you have both, Kate and Sadhguru, you have both realized the joyful and unbreakable connection with the earth and life itself. It is a timeless source of connection, inspiration, and involvement, which mustn't be forgotten in our patterns of rushed and mundane existence. And we are grateful for you spending this time with us and then imparting your knowledge. Yes, Sadhguru.
Can I say this, just 1 minute?
Please.
See, as a leader, you're always trying to bring some efficiency into the whole system. Whatever kind of work you're doing, you're always seeing how with less resource, with less people, you can turn out more. It's essentially efficiency.
That's right.
Efficiency can be achieved with machine-like discipline, which will destroy people, or if you bring a deep sense of love towards what they're doing, then when you love somebody, you will do your best, isn't it? When you love something, you will do your best. And that's all you can do. If every human being is doing their best, then that place is a wonderful place to be. That is a great inspiration place to be. And above all, highest level of efficiency will happen when people hold a deep sense of love towards what they're doing and the people they're working with.
That's a profound message, and I hope that people carry it with them and carry that love with them for the rest of their day, and hopefully that they come back.
One day is not enough. One day is not enough.
Come back to it the next day.
Carry it for their life.
Yes, absolutely. 100%, 100%. Sadhguru, Kate, thank you.
Please, I'm sorry.
No, we're grateful for your time and this inspiration and this wisdom. And it's a delight and it's a joy. And I hope that people come back to this information and to this message and to this knowledge, because knowledge needs to turn into action, right?
Absolutely. And I would
Definitely.
just say, just looking at some of the Q&As, I just want to quickly say as sort of a closing thought is that, you know, the time is now for each of us, and we're all at different stages of our development, and every single person can sort of step in and add value, add love, add story, add, you know, efficiencies in the ways that you're speaking about, Sadhguru. So I think, you know, just thinking about some of the questions, and I know just thinking about my own journey and the people that I work with, all of us are needed, and all of us make each other better when we sort of are able to lean in and support each other when we might be feeling tired or need some restoration. So I just invite everyone who's listening to, you know, just recognize that you are the leaders, you are the people, you are the individuals, the beings on this planet who can make a difference. And each of us will do that in different ways, and that's what makes it powerful. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you. Namaskaram.
Thank you.
Hope to catch up with you when I'm in the United States. Namaskaram.
Absolutely.
Have a great rest of the day, everyone. Let's make it happen.